The opinion of Sheikh bin Baz and Ibn Uthaymeen is that it is not mandatory to unbraid the braids of a woman when she's doing ghusl.
Oh, I have a question regarding a woman ghusl in general after her menstruation. So it was written in a book that some scholars have said it's obligatory for a woman to untie her hair if it is braided for the ghusl after the menstruation, but it's not obligatory to do it for a ghusl to remove the state of Janabah. The evidence they quote is the Hadith of Aisha in Sahih Bukhari, where the Prophet ﷺ said, "Take water, lotus leaves, and undo and comb your hair." So they say that it's clear that you cannot comb hair unless it's undone. So is the author understanding correct? Because African women have very curly hair and often keep it in braids, sometimes very small ones. So it will be very difficult to untie it before each ghusl and rebraid them afterwards. Barakallahu fiqh.
Wa fiikum barakallah. The most authentic opinion of scholars, backed by hadith of Mother Aisha, may Allah be pleased with her, when she heard that, it's an issue of dispute, of course, when she heard that Abdullah ibn Umar, may Allah be pleased with him and with his father, used to order women to unbraid their hair whenever they're doing ghusl for menstruation. She said as an objection, why wouldn't he ask them to shave their head as well? So the most authentic opinion, and to my recollection, this is the opinion of Sheikh bin Baz and Ibn Uthaymeen, is that it is not mandatory to unbraid the braids of a woman when she's doing ghusl, whether the ghusl is for her menses or to uplift a major ritual impurity due to Janabah. She doesn't have to do this. It's not mandatory. She must soak her braids and ensure that the water reaches every single hair and in her scalp as well, and that's all, and Allah knows best.
I asked you a similar question before, but you didn't quite answer the question exactly, so I'm going to try to be more detailed, so bear with me. So I heard you say something like najasa transfers if you have wet hands, and it also najasa is also not purified over time. So my question is, what exactly is the extent of the transfer of najasa? Is there like a rule that states najasa doesn't transfer after the second or third object? Because usually, typically speaking, if you have urine and if it's just like one drop, not a huge amount, and you touch, for example, the doorknob, and then you have wet hands and you touch the doorknob, typically speaking, you won't see any traces of najasa on your hand after you touch the doorknob the second time. So if I feel like we said that najasa transfers every single time you have wet hands, I feel like there would be hardship in that. So what is the exact transfer of it?
Akhi, again, we're back to the same old can of worms. You guys, I don't know where you get these can of worms. I know when you go fishing, you buy these worms to fish with, but it is spreading like hayfire among the people, these whispers. And unfortunately, we don't have enough time. We have to wrap it up. Basically speaking, it all comes to knowledge. If you have a drop of urine on the doorknob, do you see it? Are you certain of its presence? The answer is yes. I'm 100% certain. It's not doubtful. So if you touch it with wet hands, it transfers the najasa into your hand. Okay, how many times can I touch it before it goes? Why didn't you wipe it up in the first time? So all of these hypothetical issues cause you to have a ripple effect that would destroy your iman and confuse you even further and further. It's like a rabbit hole that you go in, you don't know when it's going to end. My advice to you is to learn about issues of purity from the authentic books. You can do that through Umdatul Ahkam on my YouTube channel, and other scholars also have done this extensively. Why? Because a drop of urine is not coronavirus. It cannot spread all over the place and contaminate the carpet. It contaminates the doorknob and the light switches and the kitchen utensils. Over what? You will find in the Hanafi school of thought that negligible amount of impurity is forgiven. And this is adopted by Sheikh Assim Al Hakeem and Ibn Uthaymeen. If you don't know your religion, you think logically, okay, one drop would do this, would mix with that, and the whole thing is contaminating the house, so I should burn the house to the ground to just get relieved from these whispers. This is nonsense. So, akhi, it's not looked upon the way you're doing, because it's all based on speculations and conclusions that are not based on authentic knowledge, probabilities, what if, this is not how it works, and Allah Azza wa Jalla knows best.